The Houston Texans just need more out of offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik. You know it, and I know it, and Bobby Slowik said as much this week when he was talking about the Green Bay Packers' performance by the Texans offense. Look, there have been some nice moments for this Texans offense this year. They've had some impressive days through the air. They've had some impressive days on the ground, but it's not all come together like many of us expected it to. There were high expectations for this offense, and why wouldn't there be? They finally had the offensive line that they wanted. They had three big-time receivers. Joe Mixon was the running back. C.J. Stroud's the quarterback. And yeah, Mixon missed a little time, but when he's been in there, he's been excellent. Yeah, Nico Collins is down right now, but the whole point of having three big-time ones was when you have one of them down, you have the other guys to step up, and that just hasn't quite been the case. It hasn't looked as good as many of us expected it to be. In the Packers game, man, that one was a rough one for the offense. Outside of a little bit of Joe Mixon's success there in the second quarter and at the end of the game, it really was tough to move the football up and down the field if the team didn't get a turnover or a gift from the Green Bay Packers. And even when they got one of those gifts, they weren't able to turn it into 7 points. They had to settle for a field goal early on in the game. So it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. But Bobby Slowik has never run from accountability. But I was interested to find out how accountable he was going to be for some of the things that we have seen over the course of this season and what we saw last week against the Green Bay Packers. So I have created the Bobby Slowik accountability scale, and you see it right here on the screen. It goes from not at all accountable to careful with that sword, Bobby. Of course, the idiom being fall on your sword comes from taking responsibility and really from medieval times where knights would die by their own sword instead of get captured by the enemy. So not at all acceptable of accountability to be careful with that sword, Bobby, on the Bobby Slowik accountability scale. And let's start with Slowik's accountability with the offensive line. Look, the offensive line has had some really good run blocking performances when Joe Mixon's in there. I kind of throw it out when they haven't had Joe Mixon because Mixon clearly makes that offensive line much, much better on the ground. But the pass blocking has been suspect throughout the course of the year. They are 6th in quarterback pressure percentage allowed. They are 4th in sacks allowed and total quarterback pressures allowed. Hey, Bobby Slowik, what's your role in making sure this offensive line gels in pass protection?
It's always a multitude of things. It's never just one thing, right? But it's shown up probably about 3 times this year where we've had some issues in protection that are completely controllable. So for me, that starts with me. I'm not doing something right. I'm not coaching something right. I'm not saying things in a way that needs to be interpreted the way it needs to be interpreted. Because honestly, the things that we missed in the game are things that D'Amico's been giving us day one in training camp. So it's stuff that I know they've seen and they've done and they've knocked out before.
All right, this is going to fall under the careful with that sword, Bobby Slowik. He definitely fell on the sword on this one. I feel very much like this offensive line is the type of offensive line that just needs to go out there and perform better. As much as I'd like to blame it on some tight ends blocking, some running backs blocking, the guy with the headset that calls the offensive plays or the quarterback, I can't. It's the 5 guys. It's 78, it's 76, 70, 69 and 71 that have got to play better when they are on the field. They've got to execute what is called, they've got to communicate what's going on. So Bobby Slowik can fall on the sword for them, but it's up to the 5 guys on the offensive line to get things done. But I'm never going to underappreciate accountability, even if maybe you're covering up for some failings of players on the offense if you're the offensive coordinator. Now, that's the offensive line. It's been an issue for most of the season. Something else that's been an issue for most of the season has been the Texans in the second half, and specifically the third quarter. In the third quarter, the Texans have had 22 possessions begin in the third quarter. They've scored 3 touchdowns, they've kicked 5 field goals, and the rest of those possessions have been punts. That's not good. They're punting nearly 64% of the time in the third quarter. They've got to be better coming out of halftime. They're 21st in third quarter scoring in the NFL. Bobby Slowik, as I started to ask him about this, he knows they've got to be much, much better.
How malleable is what you guys do on offense throughout the course of a game, and specifically coming out of halftime? I don't know that coming out of halftime in the third quarter has gone really well for you guys that much this season.
No, it hasn't. That's been an emphasis for us. You know, we've been talking about that really around the same time we started talking about being on the road. Let's hone in on how to use silent and how to make that a weapon for us and handle crowd noise and things like that. We've also emphasized coming out of half. And probably the game we emphasized it the most was New England, and that showed up, right? And we executed well. Defense helped us, gave us a short field. In this last game, we didn't. You know, we came out, and I think the first play, again, they blew us off the ball on a run play, and that's not like we adjust scheme pretty consistently as we go through a game. I'd say every game, you know, we react to what they're doing, they react to what we're doing, but it's never things we haven't seen before, you know. So by and large, we're staying within the game plan. It's more we gotta find a way, and we're working on finding a way to make sure our mentality is right when we come out of the half, that we're ready to go.
All right, so got to get the mood, the mentality of the team right coming out of halftime. Yeah, sure. I haven't loved some of the offense out of halftime, the adjustments that other teams make at halftime during the game. They are indeed apparent in the second half of games, especially against the Texans each and every week. Bobby Slowik just hasn't quite done that. We'll categorize that as pretty accountable. He was pretty accountable with the halftime issues, or the second half issues, I should say, coming out of halftime. But you'd like to see a little bit more. They cannot survive being one of the worst third quarter teams in football if they want to go where they ultimately want to go, which is where a Texans team has never gone before, the AFC Championship game, and then the Super Bowl. We're a long way away from that. They got to figure out how to get all this squared away against a tough Indianapolis Colts team. A moment here from my friends at PrizePicks. Best, easiest way to play daily fantasy. Make these games even more entertaining than they already are. Play your first 5, get $50 on PrizePicks, and use my code STOOTS, S-T-O-O-T-S. Use that link in the description down below. And maybe you want to play your first 5 on this entry that we're going to assemble together right here on the NFL tab. Hey, look at that. Popular pick right now is Joe Mixon, 79.5 rushing yards. You're just predicting more or less on given stats, and for Mixon, he's gone over 100 in all the games that he's played the whole game, so I like Mixon in that one. How about our old friend Anthony Richardson? Let's see here. Where are those interceptions? Yeah, more than a half interception for Anthony Richardson. And then how about C.J. Stroud? We got one quarterback in there. Let's go ahead and spell his name right and get CJ in there. Back on track through the air. A couple of passing touchdowns. Why not for C.J. Stroud? Mixon, Richardson, and C.J. Stroud. You can even flex it so you don't even have to win all the pieces of the entry to get a victory, but we're going to go with the power play. 5 to win just over 20. It's that easy to put one together on PrizePicks. You can put even more entries together. You got all these different sports, basketball, baseball with the World Series here. You got hockey, and of course football is my favorite for PrizePicks. The best and easiest way to play daily fantasy. Those were 2 season-long things that have popped up. The offensive line issues, specifically the pass blocking, as well as the second half struggle, specifically the third quarter. This is more of a long-term, when you need it to show up, hopefully it doesn't show up like this again. And that's the operation at the end of the game by the Texans against the Green Bay Packers. The Texans had the ball coming out of the 2-minute warning. They needed to put points on the board. A field goal gives them a lead, but also gives the Packers the chance to win the game with a field goal to answer the Texans. A touchdown pretty much puts the Packers away and makes it very difficult for Green Bay to win that football game. Out of the 2-minute warning, run, and then it's 3rd and 15. And Bobby Slowik opted to throw the football. And when he opted to throw the football, it didn't work out for the Texans. They threw a pass towards the sideline. It was incomplete, didn't force the Packers to use their final timeout. And oh, by the way, if it had been complete, Tank Dell was headed out of bounds and wouldn't have forced the Packers to use their final timeout, nor would it have gotten them the first down. So Bobby Slowik, hey, what went down with that 3rd and 15?
So the 3rd and 15, I mean, like, the starting point is, man, that's a bad call, right? So we go into it thinking hopefully we get inside leverage or off corner, you know, like really what they've shown in similar situations is 3 guys across the end zone, off corner, inside leverage on Tank. Gave him a route he scored on last year, really the same part of the field. And then instead we got outside leverage press, which is hard. Like, that's not what the route's for. They doubled Steph. So really for the quarterback, you got to get all the way to the backside answers, which would have been good on that play, but he's already been hit 12 times. You know, he's not, it's everything trickles down in the NFL, right? So it's not always any like one given play. I think what CJ did in that moment was 100% right. Like, we can't hold on to the ball. We got to get the ball out of our hands and look be darned a little bit, you know? So to me, like, it's the fact that we've had the protection issues early in the game that we're not confident being able to hang in the pocket.
I'm going to square this up as accountable enough for Bobby Slowik, just because, look, he felt like they were going to score a touchdown if they ran the play correctly, or at the very least, if the play had been able to run to its fruition, they were going to complete the ball inbounds, keep things going. They didn't get the look that they wanted. Hey, sometimes you gamble and you lose. The Texans gambled, unfortunately, a little bit too much and ultimately lost because of that. So I'm going to say accountable enough on this one from Bobby Slowik. He definitely feels like he should have done something different or maybe called a different play. It's not so much the result, though, as much as the idea. But, hey, when you call a play that maybe the third option is the safe one and you can't get to the third option because the offensive line hadn't held up all day, okay, maybe we call a different play. You just got to get that ball complete inbounds if you're going to throw it and force that timeout to be used. You've got to get that ball on the ground again, especially after the two rushing plays went backwards. In fact, Slowik kind of went through that whole late game offensive play calling approach, and well, let's see what he had to say.
When you have protection issues and the quarterback doesn't feel like he can hang in the pocket long, that trickles down to a lot of stuff. You know, it's one of those things. At the end of the day, I didn't call a good play. You know, what they played is not at all what I called the play for, and that stinks for me as a coordinator to look at that and be like, man, this play call stinks. You know, like, the players kind of got to save me here. And that happens sometimes. And sometimes you get the opposite. Sometimes it's end of game against Tampa Bay last year, and I call a play with really one option, and they play the coverage I'm hoping for, and we score a touchdown, you know? So it's some give and take right there, and that's why, like, in the NFL, it's so hard when you get in situations like that. I always look at what led to that situation, because really, I mean, if we're in 3rd and 8, or if we're in 3rd and 7, I think all of us on offense feel very strongly we're in a good position right there.
Now, I'm again going to put him in the accountable enough category here with Bobby Slowik. Again, I don't feel like he's ever run from accountability at the podium, but those are just words. Bobby Slowik's actions have to be much better. When the offensive line struggles in Green Bay, they've got to be better against Indianapolis on pass blocking. That falls under his purview. When the offensive line is struggling in a game, they've got to be better in maximizing what they can do on offense with a struggling offensive line. That's Bobby Slowik's job. They've got to be better in the third quarter and the second half. Bobby Slowik's job. They have got to be better offensively in late game situations and the management of this offense to maximize their opportunities to win. Guess whose job that is? That's right. You guessed it right. That's my job. No, I'm kidding. That's Bobby Slowik's job. Bobby Slowik has got to be better. I don't feel like he's been some terrible, horrible offensive coordinator. I don't believe Bobby Slowik should be fired. I'm not with the mob that has their pitchforks and their torches out and they're ready to storm NRG Stadium and get rid of Bobby Slowik. That's not where I am. I'm not even close to that point. Does he have to be better? Absolutely. He's got to be better. You know what Bobby Slowik did last year in the middle of the season? He got better as an offensive coordinator. I believe that he can do it again. He's got to show it sooner rather than later because the Texans have some very important games coming up. This stretch of their schedule, to me, when it was announced, was the most important stretch. It started with the Colts, short week with the New York Jets on the road. Then you've got the mini bye coming up with the Detroit Lions and Dallas Cowboys in back-to-back primetime games and then a couple of division games after that. You've got to make hay in this stretch of schedule if you're the Houston Texans, and they can't do it without better offense than what we've seen up to this point here from this Texans team. That's Bobby Slowik's job. What say you? Accountable enough for you from Bobby Slowik? Let me know in the comment section down below. On your way down there, throw me a thumbs up, like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tell one of your friends about the channel as well. And don't forget about the fantastic offer from Prize Picks. Play your first 5, get $50 thanks to Prize Picks when you use the code STOOTS, S-T-O-O-T-S. That's STOOTS, S-T-O-O-T-S, at the link in the description down below, or when you sign up at prizepicks.com, and they'll get that $50 headed your way when you play your first 5. And hey, maybe you want to play with me. I put the entry in earlier on in the video, so check that out and ride with me. We hit one a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to hit one again. Hopefully you'll be along for the ride with us and my friends at Prize Picks, the best and easiest way to play daily fantasy. Appreciate you watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.